Hey guys, Mrs. Bowling here. Um, you guys have started working on finding themes in your short story. And as you've been finding themes in your short story, well, actually, before you found themes in your short story, I asked you to find topics that you feel like were covered by your story. So I listed a bunch that I feel were covered in A Retrieved Reformation by O. Henry. And then I practiced making some themes using one of those topics. So I chose like Reformation, changing who you are. And I wrote, the author believes that true change is impossible. So after I did that, your job as a reader, when you're coming up with a theme, is to try to find as much evidence as possible to support your theme. And that's something that you've been doing over the last couple of days as well. I've had a lot of really good themes turned in. I've walked around and talked to groups that have had really solid themes and have had really solid evidence supporting it. I've been pretty proud of the work that you guys have been doing, and I'm excited to see what you guys end up turning in. But there is one more part to this that I want you to tackle before you finally turn it in. This will be the rest of your work for the week. You have all this text evidence, and hopefully it kind of looks like mine, where you have actual quoted information from the story that you think helps support your theme. Okay. And I have a lot of text evidence. I have 7 pieces of text evidence for this theme specifically. And I think I actually could have had more. And some people, as they were going through this, asked me if they needed to have as much text evidence as I did. And I said, no, you don't have to have as much text evidence as I do. But let's really think about this. If you're going to say, this is the theme of the story, this is the theme that is presented throughout the story. When I read this, this is the lesson or the idea that I walked away from this story understanding. You should have a lot of evidence to support that theme. If you only have 2 or 3 pieces of text evidence to support the theme, do you really have a strong theme? Or can you really make a strong case for that theme even? So I do want you to really be thinking about your text evidence, the amount of text evidence you have, and the quality of the text evidence that you have. Believe it or not, there is such a thing as bad evidence. You can have really great evidence that supports your theme perfectly and is spot on and says exactly what you need it to say, but you can also have bad evidence that's maybe not quite on the mark. And let's face it, you can even have ugly evidence that doesn't support your theme in any way, shape, or form. So you need to make sure that the evidence that you have is quality. And to make sure that the evidence that you have is quality, what I'm going to ask you guys to do for the next part of your assignment is justify the text that you chose. So you have to kind of defend the text that you chose to support your theme. So I have my theme up here. The author believes that true change is impossible. And then for my text evidence, for the first part, I wrote, he opened his briefcase, and gazed fondly at the finest set of burglar's tools in the East. It was a complete set made of specially tempered steel, the latest designs in drills, punches, braces and bits, jimmies, clamps, and it goes on. Those are all safe cracking tools. So this is at the beginning of the story. He's gotten out of jail. He has kind of deceived his way out of jail, claiming his innocence all along, got out way earlier than he was supposed to, and now he's back in his apartment and is sort of revisiting his safe cracking tools for the first time. So I think this is an important piece of text evidence because, for my theme, it really establishes at the beginning of the story who this guy is. If I'm saying that true change is impossible, then I better be ready to talk about who this character was in the beginning, what happened to him that changed him, and eventually what happened to prove that you can't really change who you are. So I need to have this piece of evidence in here because this piece of evidence really shows us right away at the beginning that Jimmy Valentine is a thief who deceives people to get what he wants. He obviously can't wait to get back into the safe cracking business now that he's out of jail. Okay? So that's pretty good justification for this piece of evidence. It helps us establish what kind of person he is. He is a deceitful person. So my next piece of evidence was that he sees this kid. He sees Annabelle Adams walk into the bank and is immediately struck. He's in love. He's never seen anybody so beautiful. He wants to meet her, and he sees this boy sitting outside the bank. Jimmy collared a boy that was loafing on the steps of the bank as if he were one of the stockholders and began to ask him questions about the town, feeding him dimes at intervals. "Isn't that young lady Polly Simpson?" asked Jimmy with specious guile. So he knows that Annabelle Adams is not Polly Simpson. He doesn't even know anybody named Polly Simpson. He's never set foot in this town before. The only reason he's there now is so that he can rob the bank. But she's what gives him pause. Annabelle Adams gives him pause because he wants to know more about her. So he's stopping this kid and saying, "Hey, isn't that young lady Polly Simpson?" as if he actually knows somebody named Polly Simpson. But really, he's just deceiving this kid into giving him information about Annabelle Adams. So here, we're seeing that Jimmy, actually, we shouldn't say we're. We should keep those personal pronouns out. Bad Mrs. Bully. Here, the author shows us that Jimmy is deceiving a young man into him information about Annabelle Adams. He's never been to this town before and probably doesn't even know anyone named Polly Simpson, but he wants information and he's willing to lie to get it. So again, just kind of establishing the character of this guy. I do not know if this is how Annabelle is spelled in the story, but I'm tired of it underlining it, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. So we know that he's lying to this kid. He doesn't actually know anyone named Polly Simpson, but he wants information and he's willing to lie to get it and bribe him to get it. It says he's feeding him dimes at intervals. The story was written an extremely long time ago, in the early 1900s, so to a kid, a dime was a lot of money back then, and it's a pretty big deal that this guy's giving him dimes for information. My next piece of evidence was that after getting information from this kid, Jimmy went right to the hotel in town and registered as Ralph D. Spencer, rented a room. So I think this evidence is important because it's establishing that Jimmy is going to pretend to be another person. So he's lying about his identity. Lying about his identity. More deceit. Okay. My next piece of evidence is that he opened a shoe store and secured a good run of trade. So Jimmy, he was actually fixing shoes when they let him out of prison, which is kind of funny because now he's opening a shoe store. But that's not his job. You know, that's not what he actually does for a living or what he has been doing for a living. He's a professional safecracker. He's a professional thief. So now he's lying to everyone in town by saying, "I'm Ralph D. Spencer, shoemaker, shoe store owner." So he's presenting himself, as someone that he's not. He does this so he can get closer to Annabelle Adams. I'm going to say he's in love and he wants to change, but he keeps lying to everyone around him. You know, he's not Ralph Spencer. He's not a shoe salesman, a shoemaker. He's Jimmy Valentine, professional safecracker. This whole thing is a lie right from the beginning. He's lying to this kid about who he is and, you know, the information that he wants. He lies about his identity. He lies about his profession. He convinces her to marry him. They get engaged. She doesn't even know who the guy is. So this point in the story, Annabelle and Jimmy are engaged. They're supposed to be married in 2 weeks. And I I wish I would have put more evidence in here between like the letter writing that he did. I might go back and do that. He's getting ready to go deliver his special briefcase full of safe-cracking tools to a friend that he wrote a letter to. And he lies when somebody picks it up and says it's very heavy, that there are a lot of nickel-plated shoe horns in there, and he's going to return them. So he's... Whoops. Where are you? This is what I want. He's lying about the contents of the briefcase. It actually contains his safe cracking, I guess I should do, tools, which he is giving to a friend. He wants to give up the life of crime and live happily ever after with Annabelle, but his whole life is still a lie. Even when he tries to be good, he still does the wrong thing. Oh, then tragedy strikes. One little niece locks her sister in the safe vault, and there's nothing anybody can do to get it open. Nothing. It's just a total catastrophe. She's not going to be able to get out unless somebody cracks it open. So, Annabelle turns to Ralph, to Jimmy, and begs him to do something. And, of course, Jimmy, he's not a monster. He's a crook. He's not necessarily a nice guy. Sorry. Let me adjust that. He's maybe not the best character in the world, but, he's not going to let a kid die in a safe. So it's kind of in that moment that he thinks, well, all right, I've done all this lying. I've built up this entire life. None of these people know who I actually am, but I've got to save that girl. So I'm going to give it all up. So I like this piece of text evidence because I think it does show us, I don't know, kind of an interesting moment. Finally, a moment of honesty from Jimmy Valentine. He hasn't been honest this whole time, and now he finally is showing people who he really is. So let's see, what do I want to write here? The text evidence says, in a minute, Jimmy's pet drill was biting smoothly into the steel door. In 10 minutes, breaking his own burglarizing record, he threw back the bolts and opened the door. Jimmy broke character, is what I'm going to call this, to save Annabelle's young niece from, really? Come on. I can spell better than that. From the locked safe. Jimmy broke character to save Annabelle's young niece from the locked safe. It was a rare moment of honesty, and everyone in Annabelle's family finally knows the truth about him. He never wanted them to know about his past, but there's no hiding it now. He couldn't just let the little girl die. It's kind of admirable. He knows. He kind of made a selfless choice there. He could have chosen to do nothing, and he would have been with Annabelle, and he could have kept going with the lie. Nobody would have been any the wiser, but he really actually did the honorable thing there by, going back to being Jimmy Valentine and saving that young girl's life. My last piece of evidence is what happens as Jimmy is walking out of the bank. Like I said, he kind of realizes that he's just thrown everything away, and he decides to just walk away. He's walking away from the whole group, and as he went, he thought he heard a faraway voice that he once knew called Ralph, but he never hesitated. Of course, that was Annabelle calling after him. She's confused, of course. She's confused because she has no idea where any of this came from. But he knows that if he, or feels that if he explains this to her, she's never going to take him back. So he's leaving. I think this is important because instead of staying there to explain to her what's going on with him, what his past is like, he just decided kind of right then, this isn't the life for me. This isn't me. I'm a thief. As much as like he was being a decent person by saving Annabelle's niece from the locked safe, he seemed like he actually kind of enjoyed cracking that safe. It was like something just clicked back on in him and he remembered who he was. Oh yeah, I'm Jimmy Valentine, professional safe cracker. So this person, he thought he heard this faraway voice that he once knew. It already feels like lifetimes ago that he was even with Annabelle, even though really it was just 10 minutes ago. He already is so much back to his old self that it doesn't even seem like he ever could have been Ralph. The author is showing us that Jimmy is making the decision to go back to safecracking. When he was using his tools, he morphed, I guess, back into the man he had always been, and doesn't think Annabelle would understand. Now you're telling me that spelling is wrong too? Come on, computer. What are you doing to me? No, Annabelle. I want Annabelle. Sheesh. No, I didn't mean Annabeth. I've been typing Annabelle the whole time. Sorry. And doesn't think Annabelle would understand or accept his past. He is who he is, and he's ready to move on. And I think that's it. I mean, all good justification for why I chose this. Now you'll note this evidence. You'll notice that I never said, I chose this because, I chose this because. I said the author shows us that. I never used any personal pronouns, so you guys need to tell me the background. That's what you're telling me. Like, tell me the background of this and how it applies to your theme, but don't use a bunch of personal pronouns when you're doing this. Sheesh. Sorry for the shaky camera work. I kind of have this attached to the front of my shirt and it's not great. So this is what I want you guys to do. Go back in to your Google Doc, check out your text evidence, justify your text evidence. Just like this, underneath a bullet, you can do more than one bullet if you want to. I just want to know, how does this apply to your theme? How does this help prove your theme? Why did you choose that evidence specifically? Once you've done that for both of your themes and both sets of evidence, then you are done and you can hand it in. You will have Thursday and Friday to work on this in class, so if you need more time than that, just make sure that you take it home. And as always, if you have any questions about this, you could ask me, rewatch this video, talk with your group. You got all kinds of options. So I will see you guys bright and squirrely tomorrow. Have a great night. Bye.